Welcome, everyone, to Partner Up with Amy Carroll. As a communication coach, trainer, speaker, and author, I am delighted to be your host and excited to bring you insights and ideas to help you solve your communication conundrums. This is the 22nd episode of my show, Partner Up with Amy Carroll. If you want to find out more about me or what the show's about, feel free to listen to previous episodes on my website, carrollcoaching.com, or the voiceamerica.com business channel. And be sure to download the app. Or you can always check it out on any of your favorite apps for listening to podcasts. If you missed last week's show, my guest was neuroleadership trainer and coach, Dr. Susan Kreider. We explored the concepts of mindful leadership from her book, The Mind to Lead. Suzanne offered tools and techniques to help us eliminate overreacting, how to decrease our fears, and to learn, believe it or not, to learn to enjoy challenging conversations. Check out that episode from January 22nd. Today, my guest is Viki Lazar. Welcome, Viki.
Hi, Amy. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad you joined me. I want to give the listeners some of your background so they have an idea of who they're listening to today.
Sure.
So Viki is a performer, a teacher, and a facilitator, and has been passionate about improv and theater for over 20 years. Born and raised in New Jersey in a Hungarian family, and as a shy bookworm of a kid, Viki's well-meaning fifth grade teacher cast her as Cinderella in the class show. Thank you, fifth grade teacher, for that. From then on, Viki had the acting bug and discovered improv shortly thereafter. Now, Viki, is it true you were doing improv as early as the eighth grade?
Yeah, exactly. That's when I started taking improv classes on top of the acting classes.
And what was the name of your improv troupe?
Yeah, well, we had a very, very, very meaningful name, and we were called Almost a House.
That was just sort of some bizarre name somebody came up with, or?
Yeah, I'd love to take credit for it or have some kooky story to explain it. I'm sure it made a lot of sense to us at the time. I do think that it sort of captures the stereotype of an improv name, that it's wacky and it just tells you what you're going to get.
Almost something.
Almost.
At Rutgers University, Viki graduated summa cum laude with majors in French literature, classics, minor in mathematics, and Hungarian. Viki acted, directed, and was president of the College Avenue Players, which was the campus comedic theater group. Viki worked in Nice, France, as an English teaching assistant, then as a case manager in New York, helping formerly homeless people find jobs. Viki then returned to Europe to obtain an MA in translation at Queen's University in Belfast. Now, that's not where you met your darling husband, is it?
No, it's not.
You had to come to Geneva for that.
I had to come to Geneva to meet
an Irish
person.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. You didn't care for the selection, so you're like, no, I've got to go forth and find out.
Well, I loved being in Belfast, and I couldn't finish the MA actually because I got this great job offer in Geneva and had to drop it to.
And this is at the philanthropic organization.
Yeah, exactly.
To work there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and now also the rest of Viki's time, I think, is safe to say, is taken up with the improv troupe Renegade Saints, which was first created. You were part of this creation back in 2013, correct?
Exactly.
So Renegade Saints, tell me the origin of that name.
Well, that one I do remember the story because it's a good 20 years later. It was a group of us who had been doing improv, but were really keen to perform. And as any group is that's starting out, and this was before the days of Slack, everything was by email. Okay. So it was trying to organize weekly practices with like 9 different people was a stress. But because we were all funny people, it was the emails were a joy for me, at least. And we had one member who's Greek, and his name is Stelios. And he signed his email as Saint Stelios, and he gave the saint's martyrdom story of the saint that he was named after. And then we all started doing that. And after we'd all shared our saint name stories, then we just—
Wait a minute. Did you make up your own backstory?
I don't know if people made it up. I mean, some most names have like, there is a saint with most names, like saint days. I wish I could remember Saint Victoria's martyrdom, but I'm sure it was something to do with her purity.
Of course. I'm going to look it up. I wonder if there's a Saint Amy. Or Amelia.
I hope so.
Amelia, maybe.
Yeah, but so we started calling ourselves Saint Viki or Saint Stelios when we signed the emails, and then when it came, so then we didn't care about a name because we weren't performing yet. But then our first performance was around the corner, and we realized we needed to name ourselves something. And so it was like, would we be just the Saints, or what kind of Saints? And then the Renegade Saints came along to take the edge off. We didn't want to seem too holy or anything, and that's that. And then it stuck.
Oh, that's great. And you guys have been working now I know since 2015, you've been bringing your improv toolkit into the corporate world, helping teams enhance their creativity, their communication, their collaboration. Have you been doing that in conjunction with Renegade Saints?
Yeah, I think there's what's been cool with the Saints is it's been very organic. So we started by performing, then our audiences wanted to do improv as well. So we offered drop-ins and classes. And then some people started saying, hey, these improv things that you guys do, I think they might be useful for my team. And that's when we started going into the corporate world, and here in Geneva, also the NGO world, to help team this out. And so I've done a lot of my experience with that is with the Saints, and I've also had some opportunities outside of the Saints too. Okay.
And so then I'm thinking back, you and I met in 2016.
Yeah, I think that's right.
We think it was Vinny's workshop. There might have been a sighting before Vinny's workshop.
Possibly, yeah.
And so I have always, since then, so I had admired you from afar. And so I was very delighted to get to connect with you years ago. And I think one of the things that you have illustrated, and one of the gifts that improv brings people, is the idea of community. And I know that that's something that's particularly important to you. You want to say more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, community in general is important now in these strange pandemic times. I think people feel that all the more acutely, whether, the lucky ones who have found a way to still feel connected to community in these virtual times, and those who are feeling the lack of it. I think that people can take community for granted, or can sort of those who have it, and then those who don't have it really feel how important it is. I find, I think the reason I was drawn to theater and performance and improv in the first place is because it naturally creates a community, and really, really quickly, because you share such intense, deep experiences. And so I always get involved in things and then end up being part of the organizational team. I can't help myself. And being part of the Renegade Saints has given me a great opportunity and platform. So it's been important for me when we got to start offering those drop-ins and those classes. We love having new people, but we also have a really wonderful core of people who, are regulars, who really make it feel like home, and then they come to our shows, and it feels like seeing all your friends again, which is wonderful. And then some of the other community events that I've been excited to create or be a part of, we did an improv camp for a few days up in near Interlaken. We organized an improv festival, bringing in troupes from around Switzerland, which was really cool. One thing that I was a part of, though I didn't organize, there was a refugee cultural festival, and it was really cool to be able to offer some improv there. So I think the arts in general are such a key part to building community, and I really love that. So like when we couldn't do our shows this year because of the pandemic in person, I was like, I still really want to stay in touch with the community. I love performing also for the for the adrenaline rush, but I wanted to make sure that we kept sending newsletters, that we did some kind of online. It wasn't exactly a show, but just something to keep that connection alive.
Yeah. I've had the joy of participating in a number of those events. The camp up in the mountains was way fun. And, I can appreciate also what you're saying about missing the performance, though missing that community so much that I crave it now. So I'm thankful that you're offering online drop-ins, because I'm going to continue to sign up if you keep offering them, because that makes for Wednesday night way fun.
Well, these days, I used to have something to do every night of the week, and now I'm totally free.
And you and I share this conviction, I think that's a good word for it, how important and powerful these skills of improv are, not only for performance, though we're both in a community of professionals, AIN, Applied Improv Network, something I've talked about in past shows, about bringing the exercises of improv to the professional world. Though, let me back up and ask you to, make that connection between improv in performance and then in the business world.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know. I know that your listeners have been listening to your show for 22 episodes now, but maybe they haven't, they may not know exactly what improv is before we even get into the question of sort of business or performance. So improv at its core is the idea of people coming together and making something up together, sort of creating something out of nothing together. Usually, so a lot of North American audiences will be familiar with Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's usually a good way to be like, oh, okay, that's what improv is. And that's a great example of it. And they are amazing. I love all of those performers. So essentially they get some kind of suggestion from the audience. There's often some kind of constraint. So you have to follow certain rules, like each next line of the scene starts with the next letter of the alphabet. And then you have to, within those constraints, create a new scene or a new reality. And then some people take that, in Whose Line they're doing short scenes. Some people create entire plays. Essentially, there's a group called Ostentatious, spelled like Jane Austen, AUST.
Oh, yeah.
Ostentatious. And they come up with, they improvise entire Jane Austen novels, which is so amazing and exciting. So there's this whole spectrum of what you can do with improv. But really good improv makes the audience think that it's rehearsed. They think that they must have planned it, because how else could they be so on the same page? And I think that's the key that makes people realize that improv can be really powerful and applicable in the business world or in people's personal lives with their families. Because the way we make it look like we're all on the same page is a few key skills. 1, we listen really carefully. 2, we're 100% present in the moment. 3, we are there supporting each other and making sure that the other people look good. Yeah. And 4, we're willing to take a risk. And we know that if we fail together, but we'll be supported in whatever we get out there and do. And I think that those mindsets, if they can be applied to the business world, to teams working together, can make those teams really powerful and really, really fun places to work and accomplish a lot together. Mm-hmm.
Here's a great example. I don't know if you know this exercise, because people might now, as they're listening, might be wondering, well, what does that really, how does that translate precisely? So there's this one exercise, I think it's called replay. And so you and I would start a scene, and the director would call time after a minute or two. We would have to then replay the scene as closely as possible. And in order for us to be successful, or hold on a second, and our job is to not talk over each other. I think that's one of the constraints.
Yeah, really important.
Right. And that's hard to do if you're making it up on the spot. And if you're not paying attention and going slow enough and watching the other person, and if you're just stuck in your head, then you're going to break the rule. So the moment you talk over each other, then you have to restart it again and do it verbatim as close to possible. So you've got to be paying really close attention from the very beginning. And so when we have, I don't know about you, I've had people do that in the business world, and they're gobsmacked at how quickly they've lost the focus of the other person, because they're in the head trying to be funny or clever or interesting. So that's a concrete game. I don't know. Have you ever played that one?
Yeah, I think that's a great one. I think the general, I guess, applied improv can sound kind of strange as well. But the general rule, the way it works is that we bring an exercise that maybe we use in the improv world as well, like replay, which we use to have fun and be silly in the improv world. We bring it into the business context, have people play it, they have fun, they enjoy it. And then in the discussion, we say, so were you listening 100% of the time to the partner? Okay, no, because you were in your head. Why? What? I was worried about being funny. I was worried about myself, how I would look. Now, can you imagine how much better this exercise would work if you paid attention to your partner? What about your business conversations? Imagine if we all could stop worrying about ourselves and place the attention on our, whoever it is that we're having a conversation with. And then, in these workshops that both Amy and I lead, it's really the participants who end up making those connections to their working lives, and through play, which is a really powerful learning tool. That's how mammals learn. People can learn new things about their own communication styles and about how they might be able to be present, listen more, support each other, all those things that make improv work.
Mm-hmm. That's the one that's jumping out at me now. So is there anything else we should share with listeners about the connection?
I'm sure there'll be more that comes up. I think that we've explained it, although you and I both suffer from the curse of knowledge as people who,
in this one area.
in this one area. That doesn't mean we're, know everything about it. It's just that it's hard to know what isn't clear to people who don't do it. But I think the, improv teaches these skills: leadership, sharing, collaboration, communication, and then with applied improv, we help people use improv to develop those mindsets in the workplace.
So thank you for that summary. So now let's talk in more specifics around the concepts, and let's see if we can come up with examples, or maybe even do some demonstrations for listeners on some of these exercises. You said as those 4 qualities: listening, paying attention. The last one was taking risks. Say more about that.
Well, I think if I may kind of share a personal story to connect it here. I was a really shy kid. As Amy said at the beginning, Mrs. Slade, my 5th grade teacher, kind of shoved me on stage to play Cinderella. I would have never been the person to do that. And through theater and through improv, I have become a lot more confident and a lot more sort of less self-conscious, I would say. And I think that taking risks is the only way new things and exciting things happen. But it's really scary to take risks because you can fail, you can look silly. And I think when you have a really supportive group, like you can have anywhere, but as which tends to draw the types of people that improv draws, then that takes the edge off the stakes of taking a risk, because either it's that you're all taking the risk together, or that you know that even if you go out on a limb and it doesn't work out, no one's going to be mad at you. Everyone's going to admire that you were willing to take that risk. So I think there's a really strong connection between the safe space, the environment that the team creates, the willingness to take risks, and then the amazing results that are possible when it is safe to take a risk.
Which is just so joyful. So how do you get teams to build that safe environment?
I think at the beginning of any workshop, I think what's really important is to do exercises where everyone is doing the same thing at the same time. You don't want to put anyone on the spot, and you start small, and then by the end of the workshop, they're improvising scenes out of nowhere. But at the beginning, you have them all walk around the room and then stop at the same time. Okay, not so scary. But what that's building is a sense of team, of being on the same page. Eventually, I stop telling them when to stop and start, and they find a rhythm on their own and have to be really tuned into each other. And you're just walking around. But again, you don't normally walk around in a business meeting. So it's already sort of challenging assumptions. I think the safe space it's also really important that everyone feels like if they don't want to participate, they don't need to. It's the point of it is for them to have fun and learn. They can push their own boundaries, but it's not, or their own comfort zone. But my goal isn't to sort of push them so far out that they panic and shut down.
And what are some other improv games you have people play that really do push that risk taking, or that, having each other's back or making each other?
Well, I think there's a fun game that's a storytelling game called Change, which maybe you know, Amy.
I love it.
Which maybe we can play.
Okay.
The idea of Change, the way it works is that one person is telling a story and the other person says change whenever they feel like it. And the person telling the story, when they hear change, has to change the last word that they've said or the last part of a sentence. Maybe instead of explaining how that is powerful,
I think we just lost you, Viki. So, okay, there you are. You left off on, instead of demonstrating, and then you just rewind a sentence.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't even realize that I had popped out there. No, I was saying instead of explaining why this exercise is powerful, let's do a short demonstration of it, and afterwards we can talk about it. Cool. So, Amy, do you want to tell the story?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the scary part.
I would like to hear a story about a kangaroo with a mission.
A kangaroo with a mission. Well, about 30 years ago, back in Melbourne, there was this
change.
About 30 years ago, back in New Jersey, there was a kangaroo in the zoo in Trenton. And like, what? New York City? What city do I know?
I won't say change.
Thank you. This guy, Fred, he was on a mission because he was a very extroverted kangaroo.
Change.
He was a very tall kangaroo.
Change.
He was a very not furry kangaroo. He was a very bald kangaroo. And he was kind of proud of this fact because he knew he was unique. And he thought that he could attract people to come to the zoo if they found out about how unique he was as a bald kangaroo. And so he used to he would take a lot of naps to think about how he would write a lot in his journal to brainstorm ways that he could attract people to the zoo in Trenton. And one day a little boy came by and told him that if he learned to play soccer, that would attract people. And so Fred, luckily this little kid left his soccer ball behind, which was really sweet of him. And Fred stole the little boy's soccer ball and hid it. And Fred punched the little boy and said, "I'm going to punch you again if you don't give me your soccer ball." And the little boy's like, he's crying. He's like, "Okay, take my soccer ball." He said, "No, you don't understand. This is a very special soccer ball."
Change.
Okay. I have my soccer ball. The boy thought he was doing a good thing. And so Fred trained with the soccer ball every day. And, he had some kind of special maneuvers with his strong little feet. And he had some, it was a little bit tricky because it was wintertime and he was slipping on the ice a lot. And though he discovered that he could actually, he started doing these dance moves on the ice, and that is what attracted people. So it wasn't his baldness at all. It was his ice skating soccer moves that attracted people, and they had lots of people come, and the zoo lived happily ever after.
Yay! Beautifully done, Amy.
So we got a minute or two before break. Why don't you debrief that for listeners?
Sure. Well, so I was able to see you because we're doing this on a Zoom, but maybe share with the listeners, how did you feel telling the story?
Well, there was a little bit of panic, and I could feel my brain wanting to be funny and entertaining. And it gets me in trouble. So I had to just keep staying present to the next thing. So
did you surprise yourself with any of the changes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't expect to resort to violence.
No. Well, it happens. There's a lot I'd love to touch on, but maybe we can get back to the exercise after the break.
Okay, good. So we're going to take a break now. Now, if you want to find out more about Viki and her improv troupe, you can check it out on their website, renegadesaints.ch. And that's RENEGADE Saints.ch. When we come back from break, we're going to hear more from Viki about how improv can be used to develop flexible leadership, psychological safety, and more. Stay tuned. You're listening to Partner Up with Amy Carroll on the Voice America Business Channel. Welcome back to Partner Up with Amy Carroll. You are listening to this show on Voice America Business Channel. My guest is Viki Lazar, who is a performer, teacher, facilitator, and, as I am, passionate about improv. So we've been talking about our shared love of improv and how it can make us happier, smarter, and even sexier human beings. I think we may have to demonstrate that a little more. That's in our opinion. So Viki, I'm going to turn it back to you to debrief the exercise we just did before the break.
Yeah, so before the break, I kind of put Amy on the spot. She told us a story about a kangaroo who ended up attracting people to his zoo with his amazing ice dance routine. Sort of involving a soccer ball. And Amy was talking about how she felt. She felt panic. She felt a little bit of a stress to be funny. Did you at the end have a sense of accomplishment?
Completely. I also felt excitement and a sense of curiosity. Like I assumed that all I have to do is keep taking the next step, and I will eventually achieve the goal of this, to creating the story.
Absolutely. We were talking about this exercise because we were talking about taking risks. And one of the nice things about bringing improv into the business context is that I think it allows people to practice behaviors that are a little bit scary or new in a low stakes situation. So you told an amazing story, but if the story had been not the best story in the universe, it would have been okay. And still you learned that even if I say change 4 times in a row, you're going to have another idea. So about half of people are worried that they don't have ideas. The other half of people have too many ideas. Both of them can feel overwhelming. But I think this exercise is especially powerful for those who are a little bit shy, a little bit think that they're not creative or think that they're not interesting. And this exercise can really help everyone realize that they have lots of stories to tell and lots of interesting things.
Because one of the ways people get in trouble is by doing what I was saying, how to try to be funny, interesting, or clever. And the irony, because they think that's what they need to do to be successful, and the opposite is exactly what works even better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And finally, before we move on from this particular exercise, I was curious, how did you feel about me saying change?
It was like an exciting challenge. And I was ready for it. So it helped me to stay detached from my storyline, because frankly, I was pretty sure it was going to happen in Australia. And when you surprised me with a change, I'm like, okay. And here's an example. So I took what I knew. Now, when I introduced you, I mentioned you were from New Jersey. So New Jersey was fresh in my mind, which is why Trenton, that's it.
Great. Yeah. State capital. And it was great. And I think, my goal in saying change was not to make you fail. It was to challenge you, to push you just to that point where you would come up with something interesting. I loved that you mentioned New Jersey, and I didn't need anything more interesting. And if you had sat there in silence for a minute trying to think of a more interesting place than Australia, the story would have stalled. So it was great that you just went with whatever was right there. And I think that, I don't know, so thinking about how people might apply the learnings from this exercise in the business world, I think it really encapsulates this idea of challenges from other people, if they're done with goodwill, can push us to come up with ideas that we otherwise never would have. And can you imagine if people felt so comfortable and safe in their workplace that they could push each other in this way, knowing that the whole team looks better? That would be really, really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. So that's a great example of risk-taking and how creativity and new ideas can be born. I'm also love how powerfully improv can be used to build a greater collaboration, flexible leadership, psychological safety. Let's talk about some of those concepts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think people might be aware of collaboration and flexible leadership, but maybe if you could share a little bit about what psychological safety means to you, Amy.
For me, psychological safety is that there is a sense of trust and safety between myself and the other person, that I don't have to protect myself. And I think you have some example from Google.
I shared this study with you, I think a few days ago. Google was trying to figure out which of their teams were what were the characteristics of a really efficient team, their highest performing teams. And there's many articles about it. You can research it, listeners, and please do. And what they found was that the highest performing teams were not the people with the most education. They weren't the people who had been there the longest. The highest performing teams were the teams with the most psychological safety. And what does that mean? The way they measured it was that all members of the team over a particular period of time spoke the same amount. And when they spoke with the members of the team to get sort of more qualitative information, what they found was people were willing to share all of their ideas, even their silliest or stupidest ideas, because they weren't afraid of being judged, of being shunned, of being shut down by their team members. They knew that they could take that risk and maybe it wouldn't work out, but they personally wouldn't be rejected. And because the teams were so open to ideas and really wanted to hear from everyone, they were able to build the best Kangaroo stories or the best software, right, together because they had this sense of safety. And when everyone feels like their ideas are important and people are welcome to share them and they're invited to share them, that's when teams, apparently, according to Google, are able to perform the best.
Wow, isn't that, and that's such a simple measure.
Yeah.
How much people are willing to talk.
Absolutely. And I think unfortunately, just like everywhere else in the world, there are improv groups, I'm sure, that don't have psychological safety. But because it's kind of there in the guiding concepts, our job is to make our partner look good. Another thing we say is, I'm the least important person on stage. I'm there to support you. Because you're there supporting me as well, we know that the story will be better with both of our contributions. But the story is long, right? So sometimes you'll take the lead and I will happily follow you, and vice versa. And that's where the flexible leadership comes in as well, and the sense of trust.
In fact, if listeners are interested in finding out more about psychological safety, I just did an interview 2 weeks ago, January 15th, on talking with Dr. George Kohlreiser, and about a couple of his books, Hostage at the Table and Care to Dare. So that's something that listeners can check out. So, and for me, there's a concept in improv, in the performance world, that I call it a breaking character. And I think your term for it is corpsing, right? That's the official.
Yeah.
Okay. So for listeners, this is when you've got you're doing a scene and, well, no, Viki, explain the thing about the corpse and where that comes from.
Sure. So corpsing sounds really morbid, but it comes from what it describes is when when an actor out of character starts laughing at something on stage. And it came from, the origin of it was when there's like someone who is playing a dead body or someone has been killed, and then something happens that's unexpected, and then you see this corpse, this dead body lying on the stage laughing. So that's where the origin, you don't have to be playing a dead body for it to be called corpsing anymore, right. But that's where this concept came from. And it is one of the ways in which people might break character.
And I got to drill it into me, never break character under any circumstances whatsoever. And I remember I was in a theater performance. It wasn't improv. And I was at the Fringe Festival in Edinburgh. And I was playing a cave woman. And it was myself and another guy, and then a guy in a gorilla suit. And
naturally.
Of course. And there's one scene where I'm standing right in front of the guy who's the caveman, and I whip around really fast. I'm carrying this wooden stick that practically grazes his nose this one time. And I turned around so fast and so close to him. Nothing about him moved except his pupils that dilated with this look of, oh God, I'm gonna be and I was so close to him that I could see his pupils dilate. And I found this hilarious, especially because I ended up not hitting him. That was the good news. And I was so impressed by his ability to not break character and, step out of the way. And I felt like I really owed it to him to stay in character as badly as I wanted to, just lose it right then and there and start laughing. Though there are times that I too have corpsed myself. And I remember when I was a little kid, my father would watch the Carol Burnett show. Now, in my family, my parents, all the siblings, there's 7 of us, and there's this fun competition of who can, outwit the other person or be funnier. And we're not sure where this came from because my parents, neither of them are particularly humorous. Yet my father, I wonder if it did in some ways come from our father, because he definitely put a high value on humor in that he would watch the Carol Burnett show, and there would be the scene between Harvey Korman and Tim Conway. For people who are 50 plus and older, these names will mean something. And inevitably, Tim Conway would do something that would cause Harvey Korman to lose it, and he would start laughing and break character. And my father would be the only time I would see my father laughing hysterically. The joy he got from watching Harvey Korman break character was so satisfying to me as a little kid.
I think that I love watching really talented performers when they break character, when they corpse as well. I think the reason it's so enjoyable is because what it shows you is that there isn't only this one level of the characters having a relationship or, performing, but there's real humans inside, the actors are there and they really like each other too. And I think when people are, can't help but laugh at each other or at the situation on stage, of course, there is this ideal of never breaking character, but I think as an audience member, you really appreciate this sort of peek behind the curtain and seeing, oh, they're really friends. That makes me really happy because they're doing such a good job together. I think, so for maybe a slightly younger example than Tim Conway of breaking character, if people are familiar with Saturday Night Live, Jimmy Fallon is notorious for breaking character. And I enjoy it when he does, but it is true that it can be too much. Jimmy Fallon breaks character in like every other scene that he's in. And after a while, it's sort of like, okay, well, get your act together. But
it's a job, damn it.
But there is a sort of a softness to the frustration because that he's doing it because he's having such a great time. And I think, again, connecting it through improv back to business, I think both your improv group, Amy, and mine, we all really get along and are friends outside as well. And we've had audience members tell us, we love watching your shows, what's happening on stage, but we also love watching you guys watch each other and watching you guys enjoy the performance that you're putting on. And apparently there's a term for this. You call it the inside game, I think. Uh-huh. And I call it, my term that I've learned for it is the second show. So there's the show that we're doing, and then there's the second show of watching the performers get along. And I think if you think about that in terms of a team, let's say one of those teams at Google that's really high performing, they have their first show or, their outside game, whatever they're achieving or whatever. But then there's the second show of them really getting along and supporting each other. And that makes that first show as good as it is.
Yeah. There is a philosophy I've heard about described when describing improv. They say that when improv performers, they say they do a performance and the audience loves them, except they didn't enjoy working together. That's actually considered a failure.
Yeah.
Whereas if they do a performance and the audience doesn't necessarily enjoy the performance, except they had a blast doing it together, they consider that a success, because it means not that the end goal is, so what if we don't give the audience what they want? No, the idea is that when we enjoy working together, we're going to be committed to continue working together. And the more we work together, the higher the chances are of success in the future.
Absolutely. I am happy to share. We have a sort of a mythical experience of failure among the Renegade Saints that happened in the early years. We were really excited because we were invited by a really cool organization to come and perform at their holiday party. We were delighted. We were so excited. It was in a fancy hotel and we were going to come and perform. And we went out there and we gave it our best, and it was crickets. Oh. The people were just at their holiday party. They didn't know who we were. They just wanted to be talking to each other. But I remember that feeling of like, we were exchanging glances. We're like, we're going for it. This is happening together. I remember one of the people was sort of at the back of the room watching us being like, amazing. And it was just, and it's such a memorable experience of like just it was definitely a failure, but because we all committed to it together, there was no finger pointing. Sort of the ship sank together, yeah. And the orchestra played out as it happened, and it was okay. And we love talking about that experience, not because we love reliving the failure, but we learned a lot from it. Of course, our future Christmas appearances were less like that, but we never turned on each other, and in fact, it strengthened our relationship.
I love how you said that we never turned on each other and it strengthened our relationship. And I think that's one of the things that is so powerful that many clients who, when I work with them doing improv, what's really important is that willingness and ability to accept failure. And I coach people to not avoid mistakes. I coach people to embrace mistakes and recover from the mistake, because that makes people much more flexible and agile.
Absolutely. I mean, making a mistake is only bad if you don't learn the lesson from it. And I think what you're saying about being flexible about mistakes connects it to me to this concept of flexible leadership. So to me, there's two different ways of being a flexible leader. One is just being flexible in this way of accepting mistakes, and as long as people learn from them. And then there's also this sort of more traditional sense of I'm the leader, but I leave space for other people to take the lead sometimes. And I think that's another skill that happens naturally in improv and that we can teach in our workshops.
Mm-hmm. So do you have an exercise or a game we can play that would demonstrate some of these things?
Yeah, I think so. I think that it would be fun. We have I don't even know what to call it. One word at a time story, let's call it. But instead of a story, since you told the story earlier, let's write a letter together, maybe a letter of complaint. we can
Okay,
do.
a letter of complaint. Okay.
And what we'll do is we'll each say one word at a time. And if we want to end a sentence, so if you say a word that I think is the end of a sentence, I'll say full stop, and then I'll still say a word, and same for you. If you think my last word was the end of a sentence, then you can end it.
And we can also end our own sentences if we think that.
Sure, absolutely. And so let's write a letter of complaint. Who do you want to complain to, Amy?
I want to complain to the people who control the weather.
Okay, the weather controllers. Okay.
Weather controllers.
And what would we call them?
The weather controllers.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Sounds great.
The WCs for short.
WCs. Okay. Dear
WC. Yesterday,
I
was
walking
down
to
the
river
when
it
started
pouring.
Period. I
Had
no
umbrella
with
me.
period. Therefore,
I
would if
you
would
notify
the
inhabitants
of
downpours
that
may
include
dogs
and
cats. Full stop.
this
Service
will
be
most
appreciated.
because
We
need
stability.
period. Most
Sincerely,
yours,
Amy.
Carol.
Yay! So we're smiling, listeners. We had fun writing that letter. Yes, it was a bit silly. I do have to say, it didn't turn into the letter that I would have written alone.
For sure. Yeah, I wouldn't have definitely not talked about dogs and cats in my letter.
No.
No.
And I think sometimes the letter went off in a direction that wasn't what I expected.
Yeah. So there was surprise from my side too.
Yeah. And I think so Amy and I created that together, and I think we can talk about the leadership. You know, sometimes you gave a word that took us off in a direction, sometimes I did. But equally important is both Amy and I sometimes said to or the or a. Those boring words, quote unquote, are just as important for the story to come together. And in a team where there's psychological safety, it's exciting to be the person who says dogs and cats, but you also don't feel bad saying to, the, or and, because you know that that's just as important for the fabric of what you're creating.
Yeah, because you're helping to make sense out of it.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, so Amy and I have some experience with improv. For us, it was cool and exciting to do that exercise, but it's cool and exciting even if you've never done it before. It's a great one to try at home with your family, or to challenge your favorite colleague to, can you guys write a story or write a letter together in that way?
Yeah.
Practice letting go of where you want the story to go. Practice just being okay and enjoying the delight and discovery together rather than feeling like it's a competition.
And there's another exercise. We won't have time to demonstrate it, though. We can give this to listeners. I got this from Matt Weinstein. The 3-sentence poem. So first person starts the sentence. The second person gives the second sentence that rhymes with the first one. And the third person, it could be 3 people doing it, or the first person gives the title. So first sentence, second sentence rhyming with first sentence, third is the title of the poem. I played that with some friends the other day who don't do improv normally, and they were just delighted by how well that worked.
What I like about that one is that even the third person or the title can change the meaning of the previous two, and you have just as much power over the outcome of the poem.
Yeah, absolutely. So Viki, we're moving into wrapping up in a few minutes, and I want to ask you, do you have a call for action for the listeners? And it might be something related to the challenges of COVID and isolation and all the things that we're going through, that some concept of improv that might help.
Yeah, I think I guess I would say, going with this concept of don't be afraid of taking a risk, just try being silly with someone that maybe you're not silly with. Or when you call someone, and I have these calls all the time, all we talk about is what are the numbers in your city and how are they, what are the restrictions? Try playing a game instead. It can be one of the games that Amy and I played, or a game that you remember from your childhood. I think that play is so important to help us connect and to remind ourselves of our humanity, and to allow us to just step outside and let go and be present in the moment with this person that you love or that you care about.
That's great. Thank you for that, Viki. I would add, if my call for action is, if listeners would like any of the exercises that we did, you want the guidelines for them or some other examples of great improv that you can do either face-to-face, on a car trip, over Zoom, over the phone, feel free to reach out to me and let me know. And my second call to action is to send me your communication conundrums, clashes, challenges, mishaps, and blunders, and your successes via email or through social media. And I'll read them and discuss them on future shows and make suggestions. My email is amy@carrollcoaching.com. That's 2 R's and 2 L's. And feel free to connect with me on any of my social media channels, Amy Carroll Coaching, or check out my website, which is full of free stuff, carrollcoaching.com. You can connect with Viki through the Renegade Saints website. That's renegadesaints.ch. And if you're game for more, I'm going to be hopping over to Facebook Live 5 minutes past the hour for a short chat on today's show. You've been listening to Partner Up with Amy Carroll on the Voice America Business Channel. Be sure to tune in next week. You'll be hearing from clients who've shared concrete steps for building greater confidence. Viki, thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
And before I let you go, let's do a 3-word poem. So first sentence from something that inspired you today.
I love the light even under the clouds.
And oh, how this makes me so proud. Title.
Sparkles.
Nice. Okay, Viki, thank you. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, listeners. And in the meantime, between now and next week, happy partnering, everyone.